That's an interesting take because I would have done it differently. Like, I hate emails.
Now we need to edit this. That's the personal space for kids. That's their home, right? That's where they talk freely. That's where they walk freely because that's home to them, right? Just because we make a home office, we shouldn't disturb them a lot.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Our Tech Chronicles podcast. Today, we are going to discuss leading from afar how we manage remote teams. We are going to cover why remote teams are vital in our current era, some key considerations in building the foundations of a healthy remote team. We'll talk about some techniques to keep in sync, communication patterns, and how we track work. And we'll end with some personal experiences. Does that sound good?
Yeah, great.
All right. Before we get started, right, we've all worked with remote teams, but remote work comes with some quirks, right? What's the funniest or weirdest thing that's happened to you or someone on your team during a virtual meeting?
I would say once a cat walked all over the keyboard of somebody, and then it was typing gibberish on Slack message.
There you go.
Yeah, I think seen quite a few kids walk in, the spouse coming in with a basket of laundry. That's a different thought as well. When we moved from office to home, we took work to a personal space.
Yeah.
I mean, that personal space, that's the personal space for kids. That's their home, right? As much as we make it an office, that's where they talk freely. That's where they walk freely because that's home to them, right? Just because we make a home office, we shouldn't disturb them a lot, I would say. Because if you remember
That
your
is,
childhood, home was a place where you would do anything.
yeah.
Yeah.
Very well said. That's very true. I'll be honest, when during the pandemic, when I started working from home, I actually struggled and I was trying to, hush my kids saying, be quiet while this meeting was going on. But after a while, I just, like you said, Anjana, that I embraced it. That
That's
is
their
what
personal space,
working
right?
from home
Yeah.
is all about. And I think the people also started being more tolerant about it. So everything you said has happened to me. My wife walks with laundry. My kids are fighting sometimes in the background. Yeah, it's all fun stuff.
Yeah, I know.
All right, let's move on. Let's talk about why remote teams are important now and why we need to embrace that. Not on, when I say remote, not only offshore, people everywhere.
So, talking about just the remote workforce in the US, I was looking up some statistics. So, right now, with the end of pandemic, we are currently at 40% of the IT sector are either totally remote or more remote than office visits. That's crazy. Like 10 years ago, it was like less than 20% partial remote workforce. So that's such a huge jump. And in my opinion, talking about the onshore offshore model, with the remote workers increasing to almost half, it's becoming a gray line between the on site offshore feel to it. Like, because most of the full time employees already are remote. So when you talk to offshore resources, there isn't much difference. So I think it's kind of bringing everyone together into a common rapport.
Yeah, so the remote has now two definitions. Like it's being remote in the same or very similar time zone, because like country like US, Australia has multiple time zones anyways. Very close, being remote in the same or similar time zones versus being remote in a very different time zone, a time zone where the difference is like almost like day and night. However, distance brings challenges as well as a lot of advantages. Right now you can hire people which you were not able to hire before. You have access to much larger audience of talent, and also with that you reduce, needless to say, you can reduce on your office space, in the office space, to the cost of maintaining offices and all that. Yeah, let's talk what's the right balance to get something done? How much people do you want in office and why, and what can be done remotely?
That's an interesting point because now we are seeing a pattern of different companies following different philosophies, right? Some companies are mandating a return to office where they want to foster that interpersonal communication and get things done, and some other companies are still embracing the whole remote first culture because business is still operating as usual. I am of the opinion, after having gone through, this pandemic and working remotely, my personal opinion is remote still works. And it's bringing a bigger balance to your life as well. Like in the past, I have a young family and I would only see my kids late in the evening when I come home. It's like for me 1 hour perhaps before they go to bed, and now because I'm working remotely, I'm working and I can balance my time accordingly and still get stuff done while being able to help my kids with homework and all that stuff. And so there's a sense of happiness and comfort that comes from that, which is hard to quantify, I think. So that's and so and but just the most important thing is work still gets done, right? We're not dropping the ball on anything. We're not missing any dates. So I think that is the key to still keep that remote thing going. What do you think?
I totally agree with you, Roshan. I think this remote model brings you closer to the family, like you said. But at the same time, I feel more productive than I used to be going to the office. But personally, in my opinion, it doesn't seem to be good for my health because I'm seated most of the time. And, you're always expecting someone will ping you and you're ready to answer. Like, when you're in the office, you walk away from your desk and you don't have to worry about somebody looking for you. But now it's like always you wanted to keep the sound on so you can get back. And also the need for time off has kind of dwindled away in my opinion. Right, when you're working in the office, you take your time offs and stuff. So it's I think win-win in some way, but there is also some disadvantage in my opinion.
For me, sorry, Anjan, I jumped. But for
No,
me,
no.
the biggest disadvantage though is building that culture within the team because you are not seeing each other that often and you only see each person in this little screen, right? And so I've seen companies come up with creative ways to still enable that, where they might get together once a month or once a quarter where they fly in people and spend a week together, maybe just doing fun stuff or problem solving or whatever. But it's that part is going to be is trickier in my opinion.
Yeah, I think we'll talk about those challenges and what you can do to those, right? One thing is annual meetups, flying people in and out. Something I found very interesting, there is a book called Culture Map. It's a yellow color little book. So we had I worked in a team where there was Europeans and the Sri Lankans were involved. We did a workshop together. So that was like a day off. I think the team from the Europe flew down to Sri Lanka. They came down and we had this session. And when you do that session, it's so funny. It takes an attribute and then you talk about how different cultures react to that. And you see the difference. And everyone in the team starts laughing because they can connect to their part of it and they can connect to how the other people reacted to that. Right? So it's things like that, exercises like that. Bring, if you can sort of meet, once in a while and practice something like that, that will help you build the culture to a great extent. And at work, it's not just your culture of your own country or where you were born, right? It's the culture of the organization, and you can bring some of those values and talk about it. People to realize why it is important. But yes, so 100% remote is tough. Once in a while, you need to meet the people. I think that's the summary of it.
We Which is nice because we seem to have naturally progressed to the next topic we wanted to talk about, which is considerations in building and managing a healthy remote team, right? So we talked about your example, Anjana, was excellent, I think. Bringing people together and doing these things where each other, you kind of learn of each other, right? Of their little cultural differences. What else would you all do differently when managing a remote team?
We do few things, like I think levity is very important in a team culture, as in fun stuff. So we do that all the time. Like we have Kahoot membership. Have you? I don't know if you guys played Kahoot. We do that very often in our team meetings. Set aside 15-20 minutes just for that. And we also, like, recently we transitioned. This is more of a serious tone though. Like we are used to doing brainstorming in person, whiteboarding and stuff. Lately we've been trying something called silent brainstorming.
Hmm.
That is like basically no video, no talk. We just get into a chat room and then we just chat with each other and while programming. And so far that seems to be a pretty good collaboration tool that we are still exploring. And then lastly, we are also trying something called reverse mentoring. I don't know if you guys have heard it. Is like someone like me, like I've grown so far away from doing any sort of programming. I would like to meet with one of the engineers to allow them to teach me something new. So time to time we wanted to just connect, and it's also fun. Like they realize how bad I am at programming now. So, but I also learned something. I think these kind of things kind of bring the teams together, build trust and stuff.
Trust, that is the most important piece, right? Especially when you don't have proximity to each other, right? And then I can share my perspective maybe as a manager, right? One of my key goals with remote teams is, one is to over communicate, right? And then have regular deliberate one-on-ones where we talk about their achievements, their professional growth, and then direction, things that they are working on. And we have regular check-ins, so it's very easy for them to go on the wrong path if we don't have regular check-ins, right? So this is, it's part of the process now. What else would you guys do?
Yeah, so I kind of looked at it from a mode of communication, right? When you're remote, sometimes we have this habit. Every little thing is a meeting, and you have to log in, and then people ask, switch on the video, log in. So but from the individual point of view, you're working on something. Now suddenly you have to log into a meeting, so it's kind of breaks your flow, and understanding when to talk, when to have a voice or video chat, when to type, when to have a chat, like a real time chat, and when to send the email. It's important. Not everything needs to be a video call. Not everything needs to be a chat or email. So those three: asynchronous communication, asynchronous text-based communication, plus all multimedia or video audio communication. Those three channels, you need to kind of know when to use it. I figured the the order that works: first you start with the email. You try to put your thoughts in a more structure, send it. If the email is going back and forth more than 2-3 times, that's a chat. Then you need to get into a chat. That's more of a, ideally you'd have had a chat. If you send the email, the other party asks one question, you reply, done, then that's a synchronous email solution. But if it is more chatty, definitely it's a chat type of thing. And if it's cannot be sorted in a chat, a phone call is required. Right? You pick up the call, talk to the individual, and you can sort most of the worst cases. You need to bring everyone and come to common grounds, conclusions, because there are multiple people with multiple views. And when you work for a longer period of time, based on what needs to be done, what you need to set up for. That's the important thing in remote working. Otherwise, you'll waste a lot of time by inviting everyone into all the meetings.
That's an interesting take because I would have done it differently. Like I hate emails, right? Unless I have to put it in an official form for records, I never email. So I think it depends on personality and the team, I guess. My first choice is pick up the phone. I like to talk to people. Second, chat. And then based on phone or chat results, I wanted to record the conversation in summary and then done in an email. And the last one is the meetings. So meetings are a killer. I think it's a very challenging proposition, right? Because we need meetings to understand each other, but we can't overdo it. When you have too many meetings, also it kills the team. What is your thought, Roshan?
Yeah, I think we're going to have three different perspectives, right? So I'm with you 100%, Anjana. There's sometimes meeting overload, right? And so we need to be smart about when do we actually need this meeting and how can we make decisions through asynchronous mechanisms, right? Usually, if it's like we are working on a proposal or something, so we use all these tools. So obviously for us, we use like Confluence, right? So someone or a couple of people will collaborate on a Confluence page and seed the idea and then specify who else they want to be part of that, the drivers of this page, and maybe start a Slack channel. We don't use email at all actually in our work, okay? But start a Slack channel saying, okay, hey, here's the page is out, feel free to add your thoughts, the structure is in place, feel free to change it, whatever. If we can get it done through that completely, and it has happened many times where we have a set of approvers, and if it's very clear and the time is right for the approvers to have a look, saying it's like ready for review. Sometimes it's draft, right? Or actively working on. When it's ready for review, the reviewers can look at it and they can independently check it off, saying that they approve. Boom, no need for anything else, right? But if there is no approvals or there is like fundamental flaws in the page, right? And they've highlighted it in a bunch of comments, that's when we schedule a meeting and we discuss it and we thrash ideas and we maybe then agree to make changes, share it again, and hopefully get the approval or another one more meeting is necessary. But we try to reduce it. So different ways to get stuff done. All are good, right? So food for thought. It depends on your working style and your company, right?
One
That's a
one
good.
key point you brought, Roshan, is that nowadays you get everything under like Slack and Teams because of app integration. Like you never have to leave. Like you can create a Jira story right from your chat, and then you can approve, comment. If I want to look at my team's time off calendar, right?
Mhm.
There's a workday integration, and I go in and look at my team calendar. It shows nicely on a picture. So
One
yeah,
Yeah, one key takeaway though for me is with this, especially with remote teams, and I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. I try to document everything. Even if you have a meeting, I will have meeting minutes and actions, so that even if someone who was not able to participate, or a couple of months later you forget, it's there, and there's always a source of truth somewhere to capture that. Do you guys do the same thing?
I think now it's part of the transcript is sort of built in. Like if you record the meeting, that's there, and then before that, there were some AI plugins where it records and transcribes the meeting. Yes, but in general, I at least keep actions and tag people, and probably those tagging can become tickets. So something to add to the mode of communication and then also a bit of work discipline, especially if you're working with engineering teams.
Hmm.
Yes, they need to get into meetings, understand requirements, work on certain areas, but also they need peaceful time to code. So what I've done is, if you're a remote team, unless it's really critical, there are times where the offshore team cannot be disturbed. So the way I set it up, from the morning you come to office, once you settle, let's say 9 that you settle, 9 to 12 till lunch, that's your no disturb zone. So everybody knows every day, at least 4 days out of 5, between 9 to 12 is where I have to work. I have to start coding. I have to write code. No meetings unless it's like a production issue or like once in a blue moon type of thing. And then there's after lunch, this period where they need to, have meetings, socialize, all that. And then couple of hours again for that dedicated work. And you end the day with a handover call or something like that. So there is a structure to the day. Sometimes, or most of the time, you have lots of meeting, you content switch, and you forget or you don't have time to do your core work. It's either coding or testing or writing requirements or whatever the core thing, right? So I kind of create that block structure, the timetable, and try to stick to that at least 80-90% of the time. And then they see lots of productivity improvement. And you, from being on the other side, you've been remote, you know the team is doing something at this time, that's not the time to disturb them. And you also, now you have a mental model. If you ask for a change, you know when it will come out, because you have a sense of when they work and when they communicate.
We do something very similar. We call it focus time, and we use a little plugin to we use Google Calendar, right? To Google Calendar called Clockwise. And the more people who use Clockwise, then Clockwise is like your personal assistant. It organizes meetings based on your preferences, and so you don't have like 30 minutes of free time. The meetings are clumped together, and it finds your focus time. So everyone's preference is different, right? Sounds like, Anjana, you like morning time to be your focus time. Some people like it in the afternoon, whatever, right? So Clockwise is able to organize your calendar such that you get your focus time every day, and your meetings are all together, or moved out or whatever. And we also encourage get stuff done Fridays, so no meeting Fridays at all. GST Fridays, which I love and I protect. If anyone puts a meeting, I just decline it immediately.
We do something similar for like Fridays are more relaxed and we don't schedule any meetings after noon, but not the whole day. But I agree with you both, but it's a little bit hard in practice because, especially for engineers, I think it works. But for anyone who is more like a lead or someone, they always get pinged. Like I am notorious in pinging the lead saying, hey, like we need an estimate on this because we have to plan ahead, right? Even though we may not work on it, we need help from the leads at least. So having that focus time has been a challenge in my team, to be honest. But the developers, so the TPMs or technical product managers, they are pretty protective of their team. That's what I expect from them, right? They don't want to disturb the engineers, but they are open pretty much. So if you have any questions or issues come up, yeah, that one is a pretty good idea, Roshan. I should look up. What is it called? Clockwise.
Clockwise.
Oh,
Clockwise.
should check it out.
One more quick thing I wanted to pick your brains on is how do you maintain morale when the team is remote, offshore, and even remote? What techniques do you guys?
Yeah,
That's an
so
interesting one.
for me, we have this thing. If it's a tech product, right? You know, things go wrong in production. So we kind of keep that how many days without issue, without an incident in production type of a API. That helps really well, and you kind of reward people when that exceeds it, and we talk about it when it is not. So we bring common goals, and those common goals are not something you can just achieve once and be done with it. It's a continuous thing. That's so day count from the last incident is one of those. The less or more defect jail type of a concept is another thing, where we say, okay, this team is in defect jail, and how many times you go on to the defect jail, or when your bug count is high, you go to the defect jail until you fix defects. You can't. Some gamification, those could work, but I think the real morale is in translating what they do into real world success. Like, we have solved a problem for this team, we are helping people do things differently. Translating that's a business or social impact translation. That actually keeps the morale more than anything.
Yeah, I agree with Anjana. Just transitioning from what he said, the last point, the big picture is very important to keep up the morale. So every time, like I have a team of 70 members, so I call my team a mini town hall to get them all in one meeting. And then we talk about the roadmap, like what work they are doing. I sometimes call out individually what they are doing, translate into the value. They find it extremely useful, and they gave me a lot of feedback saying we need more of this meeting so they can understand how they're adding value. And another thing that I'm a huge proponent of is rotating team members. It's not forcing them, but more of a willful rotation. Like they tell me like what areas they'd like to work with, and then I try to make it happen. But if you're a smaller team or a single team, that rotation doesn't make much sense. But in that case, things like pairing helps. Yeah, those are a couple of things that we do.
Those are awesome. Let's quickly talk a little bit about how do you keep in sync with these remote teams, and how do you track the work? Most importantly, make sure stuff gets done.
Yeah, so I'll start with that. I'll tell you how not to track their work. Don't install a piece of software in their machine, take screenshot, record their
Oh,
videos. Don't go down that path. Like if you have to do that, that's I think you have failed in managing your remote team, and that kills their morale, shows that you don't respect them, they're not valuable. So you're looking at someone who just keeps clicking, keeps typing. Your KPIs are not like number of. You remember there was some KPI called KLOC. That's basically number of lines that you produce per day. LOC is line of code, like how many line of code that you write in a day used to be like a KPI. I mean, that's not the right way to keep the team or manage the team. Rather, you need to bring more goal oriented, task oriented, motivated team, which is challenging, but that's what you need to do.
that's a great one. By the way, if you guys like content like this, don't forget to hit subscribe. Just to add on to that, Anjana, right? I think I am 100% with you. I don't think we as leaders should worry about how many hours someone works. I think we should focus on the output, right, and the outcome. That is, I think, what's most important. We want people to work smart, right? uh, and so I think things that have worked is like clearly defining OKRs, so they are empowered to go after them and get it done, right? And maybe you have in your process you have inbuilt checkpoints and milestones that they need to meet, so they know that they're trending in the right way, right? Or you can make course corrections. Anything else that you guys do differently?
I also rely on organic balancing. So basically, if someone is not adding value to a team, I think they are naturally least preferred.
Hmm.
So at the same time, as a leader, have to be stern in making sure that there is results. So I think it automatically becomes natural that they need to contribute and move the common goal forward.
Another thing I also encourage is autonomy. You have the freedom to do things your way, but here are the guardrails, right? Like, say, maybe you make a decision and it's a significant decision. Don't start writing code. Get approval, like, share it with the rest of your team and get that approval before you make that change. Keep those guardrails in place, but allow them that freedom to be creative and get stuff done, right? Would you guys do the same?
And a message to the audience. I mean, we are pretty sure you all have interesting ideas, insights, and experiences. We would like to hear from you. So please leave a comment below.
You guys want to talk about some personal experiences working with remote teams offshore?
So this is something I have realized, especially when you're onboarding a new team, like so to speak, a client team who's going to work with a remote engineering team. Right? Most of the time, client questions about the skills of the team, the engineering team, which is relative to the client, the offshore team. They question about their communication skills, the tech skills, soft skills, all that. But quite often we forget to check how qualified the client team is or the client themselves. And it's also you're in a very political situation because they're the client, they're always right, they're getting your team. How do you put that into practice? I used to have this politically correct term saying remote readiness checklist. So it feels like, oh, okay, just another checklist. It's not like checking whether it's not an interview that they have to pass, rather, a checklist. There are things like how do you document your requirements? Is it Is it only available to your team in a whiteboard, or is it in a system where everyone can comment, question, go into details, type of thing, right? And what communication tools have you invested on? Tools like video conferencing, collaboration tools? Do you have that tool stack to make teamwork happen? Also, areas like, do you have a process where you record issues? You have a process where you start with the high level epics and then detail things out? Do you have a mechanism where you can review and provide feedback? Do you have all those? That's kind of a checklist that we run, and when we run that, you realize most of the client teams are not ready. They need help, and they also realize it. They're like, oh, okay, we need, yeah, we're talking about bringing this system which we don't have because we only have 3 guys in a room, right? So you have to change. And where is your UI designs, right? Most of the time, UI designs least spoke about, but when you start building the product, that becomes one of the key dependencies, right? Simple things like that, but that list can go on. But we bring a list to see how ready the other party, the client, is.
I like the idea a lot, Anjana, right? Do you use the same list for onboarding everyone? And are there particular actions you do based on the results of the list?
That list is more of a eye opener,
Hmm.
and also there are certain things I add to that list, like what are your software and hardware. Like sometimes they say we are on Macs,
Mm.
and 24-inch monitors. The offshore team is on Ubuntu or Windows with a no monitor. I mean, that's a very incorrect comparison. If you need a extended team, remote team of the organization, they should have access to the same similar hardware, similar screen sizes. Then discussions are easier. Your problems are pretty much same. You're not talking about Windows versus Mac type of issues. All of those are part of the remote team checklist. Yeah, but it's not a checklist with 100 items, but it's a the discussion starting point to see the differences between the team, and how ready you are to extend your work and get it done from another team.
And at least at a minimum, create some empathy between the two teams too.
Exactly. Yes.
Right? Before we wrap up, Anjana, you want to share one of your war stories of managing remote or offshore teams?
Yeah. So I was talking to one of the clients. The client visited Sri Lanka. I was in Sri Lanka at that point of time, and he didn't have a lot of positive things about the team. Like, this team is not so great. Only very few people are really working hard, and only those guys are contributing. And I don't get the best from the rest of the teams. And I was like, okay, because I know this team personally, and relatively that team is quite good, except 3 or 4 guys. Then I asked them who are the good guys, and surprisingly, the client mentioned the 4 names. Those are the 4 guys who are not as par with the rest of the guys. And then it was like, for me, I mean, I can be wrong by 1%, right? But but this is completely opposite of my perception. Then I was trying to understand why these 4 guys are good. Number one, those 4 guys have been there with the client for the last 5-6 years. They know the business in detail, and all they talk to the client is business. They kind of talk very less technology to the client because they are not the tech savvy. They were initial team at the initial stage. The talent sourcing team were not able to hire the best tech guys. They hired average guys who worked with the client, learned the domain,
And build a
traveled.
relationship.
Yes, build the relationship, traveled multiple times, and then the product got complicated. We got lots of tech guys. And the rest of the tech guys are doing a great job. They're the ones who are keeping the lights on. But their communication and the relationship is not built. So then I kind of challenge the client, say, hey, you know what? These 4 guys that you're talking about, they have visited you at least 4 or 5 times over the last 5-6 years. The other guys haven't. So make sure the guys travel back and forth, and you guys come and meet them, and And I immediately went to the other team and said, unless you talk business, your perception will never be. I think it took roughly 6 months this to be settled, but that was an eye opener for me.
That's a really good one. I think lesson there for me is, don't technology is great and getting stuff done is really good, but relationship building is very, very important to be able to survive with remote and offshore teams, right? So that's a good example. Thank you for sharing. Cool. On that note, let's wrap up. Fun conversation.
Yes, great conversation.
So we started off talking about how vital remote teams are today. That includes both people who are in different parts of the world as well as even in the own country. We talked about how to what are the things that are necessary for building a remote team, and after building, how do you keep the morale up? And then finally, we shared some personal experience. We'll see you next time in our next episode. Until then, bye.
Bye bye.